Hi, I'm Michelle from How Muchly Paper Blooms. So if you're new to paper flower making, you're probably wondering what materials you need to get started. There's a whole host of tools and supplies that you can experiment with, but to start with at least, you can get by with a few basics. Here's what I suggest. First up, you need some good sharp scissors. Ideally you want some detail scissors that are sharp right up until this point here. That's really good for doing detail work and fringing and things like that. These are the scissors which I have from Fiskars. They're brilliant, I would highly recommend them. I actually have 2 pairs because I like them so much. I will link them in the description box for you below so that you can get yourself some. But they're really good because they have this spring action, so you're just limiting the movement on your hand. If you have a normal pair of scissors, the sort that have the loop over your finger, that's constantly digging into your finger as you're cutting, and it also can start to hurt after a while, especially if you're cutting a lot of petals. These are brilliant because the spring action just helps to ease the pressure on your hand a little bit, and they have a little thing to slide it and clip it in place as well. Next up, you need a pair of pliers. These are just ordinary household pliers. You probably already have some at home that will be perfect. All you need is something a little bit heavy duty. It needs to be able to bend wire in this section at the top and cut in this bit here. When I first started, I did try using some of the small pairs of pliers, like these, because they were cute and pink. And I thought, oh, these would be perfect. These are like jewellery ones. And they've got the bit for cutting wire, but it hardly cuts any of the wire. It'll only do the very thin stuff. So these are kind of useless, there's no point. You want some good heavy duty ones. I will also link below to a pair very similar to these. These I think were from Canadian Tire, but they're just ordinary household pliers, so you probably have some at home already. You'll be using these to bend the end of your wire over to make flower centres like this. So you'll create little hooks and then also squish that hook down like so. You can see that. That creates a base to build your flower from. So it's things like that, and then also just to cut through there. Next up, you're going to need some glue. I always use this tacky glue from Aleene's. I would highly recommend this as well. There are 2 schools of thoughts with glue. Some people absolutely swear by a hot glue gun, and other people, like me, will only use this stuff. So it really depends what your personal preference is. If you don't already have a hot glue gun at home, I would just say get started with this. It's pretty cheap, it's affordable to get hold of. Most art supplies shops, depending where you are in the world, Michael's, Hobbycraft, even Amazon. I get mine from Desirs, but lots of places have this, and it's relatively affordable to get started. The other thing I would say is if you're going to go with the tacky glue, get yourself a little plastic pot. This one was from Michael's, but any plastic pot will do. And I just decant a little bit of glue into the pot. And I use a cocktail stick or a toothpick just to get a little bit of glue at a time so that you can make sure you can control where your glue is going on the petal. The other advantage to having it in a pot is this glue works best when it's tacky, so it needs a little bit of air to it to get tacky in the first place. By using this pot, I'm not risking all of my glue going tacky or even drying out, but only a small amount. And also it just means that I can work with it a lot easier. So these glue pots have a little nozzle on the end which you can cut down to the right size. However, that doesn't give you very much control where the glue is going to go. So I would just say get yourself a cheap little pot and decant it. That can be anything though, you know, an ice cream tub would do. As long as it's airtight, that's fine. And then obviously the main thing you're going to need is some crepe paper. So I have 2 different colours here. I've got this pink colour which would be for my main petal, and this green which would be for any of the details. Things like calyxes, which are the underside of the flower, the leaves, and even if you want to just wrap part of the stem. So you need at least 2 colours. As you go on, you will experiment and you'll want to try multiple colours and different techniques, but to start with, just go with 2, a petal colour and a leaf colour. There are lots of different types of crepe paper. The only 2 that you really want to consider though are either Italian or German. There are other ones out there. There's cheap party streamer type crepe, there's tissue paper, there's a lot of Chinese paper, but they really don't have the same quality as the Italian and the German. There's only really 2 manufacturers that you want to consider. So the Italian is Cartotecnica Rossi and the German is Werler. And then each of those will have their own distributors around the world. But those are the 2 good quality crepe paper that you want to use for making paper flowers. So both of these crepe papers are actually German crepe paper. and these are from the Leah Griffith range at Werribee. I will pop a link in the description box below where you can buy these yourself. They are available direct from Amazon as well. These are ultimately the only papers I use now. So let me show you the difference between Italian crepe paper and German crepe paper. This is the Italian stuff. So if you can see, there's lines along here. Now, if you're cutting a petal which is smaller than this distance, which is about an inch, you're going to be fine. But most petals end up quite a bit bigger than that. And this line, although you can stretch it out a little bit, it's always there, and it really annoys me. A lot of paper florists do still use it. There are a lot more colours available in this range. This is from Carto Tecnico Rossi. They are the main suppliers of Italian crepe paper. However, for me, I would rather colour my own paper to get the right shade than have machine lines. So it's up to you what you prefer, but personally I would rather use the German stuff, which actually has no lines to it. So this is great because you don't have to worry about these lines at all. The other thing to consider with your crepe paper is making sure whichever coloured green that you choose, that you can match it to a floral tape of a similar colour. So floral tape is available in a few different colours. There's not that many green colours. This kind of mossy green is a common one, as well as this dark green, and then a couple of browns as well. There are other colours you can get, but they're quite hard to find. So you'll probably find these are the two colours available in most markets. So this is virtually identical actually, the same colour green. That's just by chance. These are different brands. There's no reason why they would match, but I love the fact that they do. It just makes life a lot easier when you're creating your flower to make it look more realistic. You can use different coloured greens, and then you just have to use some colouring techniques on this paper to make it look similar so that it doesn't look unnatural to have a darker stem and a lighter petal. There's also a couple of browns you can get. You can see this is actually the only roll I've had of this lighter brown. I don't use it for anything, it's just not quite the right shade. And then this dark brown is really good for stems of branches. So if you're creating like blueberry stems or some kind of other berry, these are good for that. So the final thing you're going to need is some wire. This is 16 gauge wire, this is fabric covered. You want to make sure you have either fabric or paper covered wire. There is absolutely no point getting the uncoated wires. There's some that are like a plasticky finish. They are significantly cheaper, so please don't be tempted by them. I have tried them in the past, and none of the crepe paper or glue or floral tape will stick to it very well. So ultimately it's just a waste of money. So make sure you get either fabric or paper covered. Most craft shops will sell either the paper or the fabric covered, and again I'll pop some links in the boxes below for you. You want to get a few different sizes of wire as well. This is 16 gauge wire, which is the thickest that I use, and this is what I'll use for my stems. It's quite good if you need a sturdy flower, so something with a large head to it like a peony. You also want to have some thinner ones as well. So depending what flower you're making, you might want a 20 gauge for offshoot branches for things like berries, and also something like a 22 or 24 gauge wire for the inside of petals or leaves. So the best thing to do, I would say, get a selection of your wires ranging from 16 to 24 gauge. Make sure they're fabric or paper covered, and then you can experiment with different ones on some scrap paper, figure out what you like and what you don't like. I initially didn't use 16 gauge at all. All of my early flowers were made with a lot thinner stems, and after a while I realised that they just started to droop and it just wasn't a good look. So I always now use the 16 gauge, or occasionally an 18 if it's a lighter flower, but most of the time 16 for my stems, and then I go thinner for any of the other details that I'm using. Hopefully that gives you a good place to get started. Make sure to check back soon for tutorials to put your new tools to work. Make sure you like this video and hit subscribe so that you don't miss out when they launch. Hope to see you back here soon. Tell Muchly for being here to celebrate the special moments with me.